take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. I mean, and Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
WESN.
Now we're going to be tackling a crucial question. Is our education system truly preparing students for the real world? Many graduates leave school with academic success but struggle to find jobs or adapt to the demands of the workforce. So should we focus more on skills training and entrepreneurship rather than just academic achievements? Joining us this morning to discuss is Tutor President Mr. Martin Lumpkin. Good morning, Mr. Lumpkin, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Ms. McNeish. Good morning, and thank you for having us. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Lovely. So we're going to jump straight into it. Mr. Lumpkin, from your perspective, do you think our education system adequately prepares students for life beyond school?
And that question, we really need to look at. The education system currently, is a very archaic. It is one that we would have developed from since we were a colony of the British. And we have made some strides, no doubt about that. But presently, there seems to be an inadequacy in the education system to prepare our students. The vast majority, we have quite a bit of our students who are failing, well, what we seem to be saying, failing the system. Or is it that the system is failing our young people? Now, don't get us wrong. We are doing some good things. There are students who are excelling, and compliments to the schools, to the educators that are producing such well-educated persons. But we have a number of our students who are falling through the cracks, as they say, and who are not seeing the relevance of education. Because, as was previously said, even if you get your qualifications, your certification, there is limited number of jobs in the environment, and so persons have to seek outside. So is it that we are really catering for the needs of the country, Trinidad and Tobago? There needs to be focus on, as you would have mentioned, entrepreneurship, as well as skills-based. In the past, when we reflect in the 70s to 80s, we had the junior secondary schools and the senior comprehensive schools, which would cater for the technical vocational area. Now these areas are languishing. You hardly have educators, teachers for those areas, and it's because we have not been catering for such. And there are children who are seeking to access these subject areas. And because the school does not have adequate teaching staff, even support staff, lab assistants, farm attendants, etc. So what are we doing? We are really killing the system. There is a drive to get it back going, but we believe the drive it's kind of on neutral right now. It is not sufficient. And that those areas need to be focused as well.
Yeah. Let's look at the major exams that we have. So we have SEA, CXE, CAPE, right? These three major exams that students have to face at different points in their life. I mean, in your opinion, do you believe that, these exams, or how do you think these exams shape the way that students learn? And not just that, I mean, are they too focused on theory over practical application?
When we speak about these examinations, we sometimes wonder what is the nature and purpose of our education system. Is it just to prepare our students for examination?
Because that's how it feels sometimes.
Yes. And do we only look at certification as well as skill versus skill-based? And now more than ever after we are looking at post-pandemic, now more than ever in terms of emotional intelligence as well, are we really focusing on this? We are of the position that the SCA, previously the Common Entrance Examination, which is a placement examination, should be seriously reviewed. We should not have our students at that age going through such a rigorous and life-changing examination. And a lot of pressures, undue pressure, is placed on not only the students, on the parents, but even the educators, because they are judged, they are looked at in terms of their results. And it is, to us, something that needs to be looked at seriously. If we are looking at placement, we should find an avenue, a way of placing our students into our secondary schools. And one of the things we have to look at is universal secondary education. We speak about it, but really do we have? Because we do not have sufficient spaces to place our students. And are all schools equal? Now, there are certain prestige schools that will argue that they should be in existence and they should continue because of the work that they do. And hats off to them. They have been doing excellent work. But when you put certain levels of achievements, academic achievements, in one school, and let's look at the lower spectrum. When you put students who are supposedly underachieving, children who are certified as failures into an environment, and you do not give that school the adequate resources in order to treat with it. And we're not just speaking about educators, you're looking at support staff as well, child psychologists, sorry, excuse me, yes, in terms of remediation, in terms of other areas beside our mainstream curriculum. You want everyone to write almost the same examination, but yet still you have different achievements. And then we have to look at how boys versus girls learn. And there are some late bloomers in life. Are we looking at that, or are we just marking time and going through the system, hoping that we will find different ways? But when you do the same things over and over and expect different results, we all know what that is the definition of. And so this system really needs a reset. We really need, in terms of what are our focus in the education system? How is it supporting national development? In terms of our scholarships as well too, are we giving scholarships to persons who are going to build the nation in the areas that are necessary, agriculture, other areas as well, the technical vocational areas, instead of the what we term the mainstream or the high-end doctors, lawyers, etc., etc. And so, these examinations we have to look at. Yes, they are necessary in terms of CAPE and CSEC, in order for persons to advance. But what happens if we really look? We have approximately 19,000 students writing SCA. If we look at how many write CAPE, it's much less than, not CAPE, CSEC, it's much less than that. And then when we look to CAPE, so it's a kind of filtering off. What happens to those who, in between those examinations, do not continue or would find alternative areas? Are we really catering for our education system? Are we catering for our students and our citizens?
Yeah. I think because what you said there, I completely, I agree in a sense, because when I was in school, I don't know if this still exists, but in around Form 3, there would have been an exam. And that exam we were told that that exam is for students who, I guess, don't make it all the way to CSEC, to CXE. And because between SEA, primary school, and when you get to Form 5 to sit that CXE exam, there is a falling off of students. Not all students go on to do that exam, and far less for the CAPE exam. So in Form 3, there was this exam, and it was for students who don't make it all the way through, and they would be able to have certain passes or a certain level of accreditation for these for school, you know. And to me, that is almost like, when you think back on it, it's like it's only for exams. It's like, what is that? Because when we leave school now, it's what are your passes? You know, to get a job, you have to have at least 3 passes, math and English, and, you know, another one. So but how do I know when I go out there? Life is so big, it's so wide.
How do I know that I'm prepared when I go out there? Yeah.
So that would lead to my next question. You would have mentioned, you know, vocational training, right? Can we just talk a little bit more on that and just explain, you know, what is this vocational training, and should we have a stronger emphasis on that and having apprenticeships in secondary schools?
Yes, in terms of the technical vocational areas, so we're looking at woodwork, metalwork, we have other areas, sewing, etc., etc. And these are the areas that we will say it's non-contemporary in terms of the mainstream academics. And let me say our position in terms of tutor. The technical vocational areas are not for persons who are not academically inclined, as we used to say, or what in your local parlance we used to say, they don't see. Actually, to get into a technical area, you have to be highly intelligent. It may not seem as the normal in quote, and you have to be highly skilled as well too. In the 70s, 80s, up to the 90s, we would have had these schools that would cater for students who were more inclined to that area. And as previously mentioned, it has declined significantly. We had the closing of John Lee and San Fernando Tech, which would have catered for the upskilling of these persons, and then we would have the teacher training aspect of it, which was closed down. So when you kill that aspect of it, aren't you not supposed to have a decline in the number of teachers in those areas? And then we have these big areas within the comprehensive schools. You know, so we have the mechanical areas and so. And then after a while, they just become derelict. There's no teachers to teach, and there's also no equipment. It's not being serviced. Those schools that still continue to have it, they have a challenge with their equipment as well as their attendance as well too. And this is an area we believe we don't have the actual study, but we are just off the cuff thinking that when you had the decline of these areas, then you would have seen an upsurgence of violence and indiscipline because students are not being engaged in, and then it redounds later on down in society when you have less of these skilled areas. Now people are complaining to get a skilled workman. The amount of money you have to pay to engage these persons, because it is a scarce resource in our society. And some of our skilled persons are going away because the opportunity in other countries are greater than locally. However, that area needs to be revived, resuscitated. It's not completely dead. We're not flatliners yet, but we need to resuscitate. And again, in terms of entrepreneurship and in the small and micro enterprises, there are persons who are attempting to have their own business. Are we enabling them properly to go out and seek their dream having their own business, which will build the society as well.
So speaking on that, would there be merit, in your opinion, would there be merit in having schools partner with local businesses where they can get some sort of mentorship programs? So I know we have the JA Junior Achievement thing in Trinidad and Tobago, but what about taking that a step further and having that extra practical insight when you're dealing with persons who are already in those positions?
And yes, it will be ideal to have these institutions, these small businesses, and even larger businesses come in and assist schools. There are schools that actually do that, not only at career day, but during the academic year as well too. But we have to signal a small amount of caution in that you have to do your background as best as possible, because when you are bringing persons inside of our schools who are outside of the staff, etc., you have to do your due diligence and your background checking in terms of that. But yes, it is a way that we can encourage our young people into areas and to see persons who have made it through whatever challenges that they would have had. Any sort of, those aspects to boost the morale of our students is welcome. And as I said, I know there are some schools who do it. Some do not have the opportunity because of their where their community is, and that engagement is very limited. But it is an area that we can look at. Even at the primary level, we were saying that the technical vocational aspect can be introduced, and at the primary level, our teachers can identify those who are more skilled in those areas and can point them in a direction which will have them, achieve more and build the society. But when you're only focused on this high-stake examination, then it becomes more difficult in terms of grooming our children in other areas.
So,
Mr. Lumpkin, I want to talk about teachers' role in bridging this gap. What role do teachers play in bridging the gap between academic learning and real-world skills and preparing these students to go out?
By and large, most of our educators, not all, and we will be the first to admit, not all our educators envisage that area as well, but the majority are. They would have other areas within the curriculum. So we have agri-science and we have other areas that they would focus on. Now the Ministry of Education is focusing on cultural transformation, which by and large looks at the non-academic areas, taking children on educational field trips, having sports and other areas, cultural and language, etc. That in itself, we have some difficulty with the implementation because the schools are not being equipped to properly have it done. All schools are not equal, and as such, you have to look at that. However, those areas are being focused on mainly at the lower levels in the primary school and even the secondary. But because of the nature of these high-stake examinations, then teachers have to now prepare their students for those examinations. And so they focus in the primary school, they focus on the three areas, the mathematics, English language arts, and English language writing. And as such, unfortunately, some of those areas are being put aside until after the examination. Then the teachers will focus more on those areas. However, because again of that high-stake examination, even at secondary school, these areas are being put aside so, to prepare these students for this examination.
I do believe, though, I just want to make this point, teachers preparing these students, and yes, the main categories or subjects focused on is math, English.
Literature, maybe.
English,
yeah.
But so, in primary school, it's math, grammar, and I think
Creative
it's
writing.
creative writing, right?
Yeah.
So, what happens to these students who, they're not as, how to put it, they're not as bright,
Okay.
per se, or they're not, those are not the, sometimes kids, school is not for everybody. And I've always said that. I think I was one of those students where school just was not for me. And when that happens, you're in a classroom where some students, they learn faster, they progress faster than others, and these students who cannot keep up, they tend to get left behind. And there's nothing in place for that other than if you do not pass your end of term examination, they can keep you back. They can keep you back a standard, or they can keep you back a form.
In the same program,
And
the same teachings.
And so not only now all of your friends or the other students are moving forward, instead of you moving forward but in a different way, now you have to be kept back to do it all over again until you reach or are up to that standard where you pass the exam. Because it may not be that I'm just dumb. I would like to think that anybody's dumb. You're not dumb. It's just your way of learning, your style of, you're in a classroom where you have 30 to 50 kids, and each child will learn differently. And I think this is something that it is spoken about, but nothing is actually being done to address it. And I don't know how complicated or difficult it might be to address, because it's a real thing, and we're not going to get the change unless it is figured out. So, I mean, any comments on?
Yes, and your assessment is to the point. What it takes is, one, political will. Every 5 years, we have a change, well, almost every 5 years. Sometimes it may be less, or it may be more. So we saw a cabinet reshuffle. Thankfully, there's no change in terms of education.
Yeah.
But you have at the head persons who are supposed to look at policy, is a politician. And unfortunately, and I'm saying broadly, I'm not singling out any politician, but generally, politicians answer to their political party and those who are their principals, and it may not be political as such. And when you are driving policy based upon political aspects, then you can imagine that lower down may not benefit properly. And then when you have a change, then policy changes, because if it's a different party, it may be good, the policy, but because it came from my opposition, I am going to change it, and I will put something else. So that is one aspect that it is unfortunate, and maybe we need to look at. The other aspect is, what are we really educating our nation for? What are we trying to get our children to do in the future? And those aspects we really have to look at. To change it would require really political will. And one of the other things that always plays a part, and this administration and previous administrations have always been speaking about funding, and to change the system to give the relevant backup systems and inclusive, because if you're looking at inclusive education, it's not just students who have physical challenges, but those who have special needs as well, to having the resources to assist the classroom teachers. And then the other aspect, I'm jumping very quickly because I know our time is limited, but also skilling and up-tooling our teachers, reskilling, retooling our teachers to really deliver the curriculum in a manner that is not just, as we call, chalk and talk, sage on stage, etc., but giving them other resources. So we speak about the technological aspects as well. Not just giving a laptop, not just saying that you're giving Wi-Fi. What about the training? What about the software? What about, equipping schools? And there are consequential areas that need to be addressed as well too, the physical aspect as well as electrical, etc., etc. It's going to take some money. It's going to take, the willpower. But if the persons who are driving education in Trinidad and Tobago has that vision, then I believe and Tutor believes that it will redound to the benefit. It could be incremental. It doesn't have to be a widespread change, but at least if you see incremental changes and meaningful, not just putting, these things and saying, hey, we did this tick a box kind of aspect, but really looking at educational changes and best practices and so on. We always like to refer to the Nordic states and so on, but have we really looked at what they have done preparing for such changes and putting into place the necessary infrastructure, training, etc. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have always spoken about a clear career path for educators. Have we identified that if at the primary level I want to be a teacher, what do I need to do? What training would I get? What education would I get going up the line such that it enables that environment for an educator? We always look at giving big dreams, which is good, doctors, lawyers, etc., etc. But what about our teachers as well, which plays an important, and we would argue, the most important part in national development.
Yeah.
Just really quickly, because I know we have to wrap. From a teacher's perspective, how far along are we from the implementation of some sort of AI into the classroom, and how do teachers respond to wanting to put AI into the classroom?
Very good question. When we saw the emergence of AI, a lot of people were skeptical and they were taken aback. They looked at it at the level of the students using AI to supposedly cheat. Yeah. Now give the Ministry of Education credit. They are doing some training in AI with our educators, both at the teaching level and administration. And that in itself, that training, we have some issues which that implementation, and that's a different topic. However, I know that little by little, some great increments, our educators are embracing it and using it in order to enhance their delivery of the curriculum and teaching and learning. For example, we will advise on how we can do a lesson plan catered for a child who has special needs, and catering for that, especially that learning needs. So it can be used in a positive way, and I know that there is the move to have educators advanced in that area.
Yeah. Really quickly, if we were to introduce reforms, what would your top 3 priorities be?
In terms of the technical vocational area, that is one of the great areas that we have to look at reform. Teacher training has to be more advanced and greater, as well as if really and truly at the basic level of ECCE, that change to the legislation to include, because right now the Education Act speaks about the education age from 5 onward up to, I think, is beyond 12. But the change in legislation to include the ECCE, which is 2.5 to 3 years. So as of now, the legislation does not include ECCE, which is the backbone and the basic, the start or the foundation for education. That needs to be changed immediately to include them, so that that sector is included and it can even be improved.
Right. So, well, Mr. Lumpkin, before we wrap up, I don't want to end this conversation without touching on, the parents' role. A student's parents' role. I mean, we understand the teacher's role, and teachers working hand in hand with the parents, or parents working hand in hand with the teachers to ensure that their child gets the proper attention in the classroom. I mean, just touch a little bit on that so that we can understand, you know, even when it comes to these training periods, schools, it's not, because parents do have a big part to play in preparing their child for these major examinations as well. You know, it's not just a teacher. So
what is that role?
What is that role? What is the parent's role?
Okay, so the home, and we can speak about the parents or the extended family, the nuclear family, is the primary educator of the child. The child starts off at the home. And so the necessary behaviors, necessary groundwork has to come from the home. When I reflect on in my experience, my parents would have ensured that I had a certain level of discipline and yearning for education. And the school now becomes the secondary level of education. So the home is very much or plays a great part in education. And the support is not a matter of just dropping off the child to the school and picking them back up. That's another issue. But the mere fact that between the time that the child is away from school, there needs to be a certain level of support and reinforcement. We have seen over the years that you will try to, you know, inculcate a certain behavior and culture in the child between the school time. When the child goes back home, and especially for weekends and long holidays, the child comes back with, you know, it's like it's erased and so on. So when you also speak about preparing for the examination, we don't expect parents to be teaching the children at home. However, giving the support, asking the children, you know, what did you learn today? You know, having that conversation, giving them a safe environment as well as at home, because we've experienced where children do not have that safe environment, which would affect them psychologically when they come to school. They may find a safe haven in school, but when they realize they have to go back home to that unsafe environment, then, you know, it affects them. Sorry. And we cannot overemphasize the role of the family parent support when it comes to the nurturing, especially from ECCE, primary and secondary, where children are now going through, you know, different changes. But though they need that support, it is highly essential that parents give that support to not only their children, but the school as well, too.
Yes.
We'll see quite recently, Friday, where a parent would have put on the uniform of their child to breach the security and to go and accost another student who had an altercation with her daughter. And you know, we look at what lengths you would go to do that, not allowing your child to deal with it, or even go to the school and have them deal with it in a meaningful way. Yes, I know we should go to time.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Lumpkin, thank you so much for joining us to have this conversation, because, I mean, these are conversations that we cannot have enough.
Yes.
And I think we should continue to have conversations like these until we get the change that we're looking for, the change that is necessary. So, again, thank you for joining us on the program, and I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Same to you. All the best, and thank you for having us. It's always an honor to have these conversations.
Of course, yes. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue on with our program this morning. So stay with us. We will be right back.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia that's responsible for looting the country, and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
Good morning and welcome back. So moving swiftly along, the legal world has been rocked again as on Tuesday, prominent and controversial senior counsel Israel Khan demanded the resignation or the impeachment of Chief Justice Ivo Archie in a bold way. Khan has made waves before in his commentary of various matters of legal attention. In Trinidad and Tobago, and this time it's no different. Khan is ringing the proverbial bell on what he sees as the lack of judicial accountability in the way former Chief Magistrate Marcia Caesar left the High Court. On with us today is Senior Counsel Israel Khan, here to explain his strong defense on the issue. Welcome to AM Prime. How are you?
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. So you stood outside the Hall of Justice in Port of Spain in a one-man protest calling for the resignation of CJ Archie, stating that as the head of the Criminal Bar Association, you demand Archie's resignation. Why does your designation matter on this issue?
Pardon, didn't hear the last question. What?
Sure. Why does your designation matter on this issue?
Well, if the Apex Court found as a fact that the Chief Justice used his office to influence the Judicial and Legal Service Commission to force and to coerce a sitting judge to tender her resignation, and this is unlawful, such a Chief Justice should not continue in office. This is our position.
Do you
what
think...
Happened,
Sorry, go ahead.
What happened, he bought the office of justice in dispute. He acted illegally. The Privy Council said he acted illegally. As a matter of fact, when you examine the judgment, he committed the criminal offense of misbehavior in public office.
So he committed the criminal offense of misbehavior in office. But do you think Aya Caesar was culpable in any way?
If I think what?
That Marcia Aya Caesar, was she culpable in any way?
Caesar?
Yes.
Yes, she was culpable in that she did not reveal the true state of parted matters. She didn't check personally on it. She allowed a clerk or somebody to give her the amount, and she told him it was 28 when it was 53. And at that time, what they should have done is, well, either trigger Section 137, but they couldn't force her to resign. So she is culpable in that she was negligent, and also the Judicial Legal Service Commission is negligent. Before they recommend to the President to appoint a judge, they ought to do due diligence and make sure there are no parted
due diligence. I kind of lost you at the end there, sorry.
see, this matter is not about being negligent and being whether you're qualified to be a judge or not. When she told them that she had 28 parted matters, they still went and appointed her. And when the S hit the fan, you see, at that time, the country must be reminded that the Chief Justice was in serious problem, and many lawyers and responsible people were calling upon him to resign, or were calling upon the Prime Minister to trigger investigation into him because he had used his office to obtain houses for intimate personal friends. And he had done other things, and they were calling for him to resign. So when the prisoners started to riot and they realized that he appointed a judge who he ought not to be appointed at that time, it would have further aggravated the situation in relation to him. So he thought the best way out for him is to cause her to resign, but he misled her, he tricked her, because he told her she could resign, go back and finish her parted matters, and then we will reappoint you back into the system as a judge. Now the law does not permit that. Once she accepts her judgeship, her position as a magistrate is now what they call void. She cannot go back and pick that up. So he misled her, he tricked her. And I know he went to the president and told the president that she resigned voluntarily and resigned of her own free will. He lied to the president. So he brought the office of the president into disrepute also. So that is why he cannot stay as Chief Justice in the country. People have lost confidence in the Chief Justice, and there are plenty other things, you know. There are over 550 police killings of citizens in this country under his tenure, and he's supposed to set inquest courts with various coroners to hear whether these police committed murders, manslaughter, or they acted in self-defense. And he is doing absolutely nothing. For the last 3 or 4 years, magistrate courts are all shut down. The high courts are not working properly. People have to wait 10 and 12 years locked up without bail to get a hearing in court. And he is just sitting there like if he's untouchable.
So the LATT made a point about legal precedent, stating that it's...
That we will trigger our 137. All we are saying is to find out, have an investigation, find out. No 3 Court of Appeal judges in this country. And everything in this country runs on tribal race by the ordinary people because they do not understand what's taking place. 3 judges of our Court of Appeal. Mendoza, who is from the white diaspora, Bureau from the African diaspora, and Suhan from the East Indian diaspora. 3 judges, so it has no race and class and all this. Long as a fact. But he acted illegally, he forced her to resign, and she remains a judge. Then they went to the Court of Appeal. They went to the Privy Council. Those judges have no interest in what's happening with tribe and race and class here. 5 judges said the same thing. So in all, 8 judges said that the man is a reprobate. And the man still sitting there. I see on the newspaper there, Ramin said, how could this man still sit as a Chief Justice? How? How could he sit there?
Yes.
How could he use his position as Chief Justice to fast-track House's application for his personal, intimate friends? To get the national housing, and people were collecting money behind the scenes. All that came out in the open, and still they didn't remove this judge.
Why do you think that is?
Pardon?
Why do you think that is?
Because what happened, the political directorate wanted a Chief Justice who he could control. So when they remain here, he's obligated to the political directorate, then Prime Minister Rowley. You know what they were saying? That how the judges, the Minister of National Security said the judges are friendly with criminals. And the Chief Justice never defended the judiciary. You know what they're saying? The judges granted bail to murderer illegally. He never defended them. All sort of things they're saying about the judiciary. Blaming everybody. And when they couldn't handle crime, they started blaming the judiciary. And this man put his tail between his legs, Chief Justice, and remained quiet, not saying anything. So they want a Chief Justice who would not buck the system.
So the LATT made a point about legal precedent, stating that it is now clear that judicial officers may be removed from office under Section 137 of the Constitution based on evidence of conduct that occurred prior to their appointment. Do you agree that this may set a legal precedent for cases going forward?
Well, what happened if the Prime Minister of the day, who now is Stuart Young, does not advise the President to set up an independent committee to find out all the facts and so on? If they do not do that, because only the Prime Minister could do that,
yes,
what will happen is that either Law Association or the Criminal Bar Association or Ramishmar or somebody will go for judicial review. Because under a liberal democratic state, you can't see this thing happening, and as Prime Minister, the power rests in your hands and you're doing nothing, as how Raleigh did. So they will go for judicial review. But the right thing is not to go for judicial review. The right thing now is everybody in the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, all the lawyers must resign. And nobody must take up any position to serve under this republic. And if they do that, what will happen? The Judicial and Legal Service Commission cannot function, and you will have no alternative but to resign. That is the best way to do it.
So I'm not a legal mind in any way. But what it seems like from a public standpoint is that there's a lot of infighting going on right now within the JLSC, which is supposed to be an organization and a court that is at one of the highest positions in our country that we're supposed to look to, that's supposed to help us resolve cases in our country. But all we're seeing now is a bunch of infighting, and as you just said, all of the lords must resign. How is it right that you are able in a position to call for something like this? How did it get so bad?
What happened is that the Judicial Legal Service Commission, where it's infighting you're talking about in the Judicial Legal Service Commission,
yes,
where the infighting taking place.
Well, it seems like the CJ, Ivo Archie, the JLSC, exactly how it happened with Marcia Caesar. Stuff like that is not supposed to happen. It just seems like that's what's the focus and not the hundreds of cases that still need to be heard.
Okay, all right, okay, we'll leave that aside. Let's focus on that.
Okay.
What has happened is that Archie misled the members in the Judicial Legal Service Committee. You know, I call upon Stolmeyer, who was a judge, and another judge, Camille Smith, to resign shortly after this, and they tendered the resignation because when they realized what happened and how they were used, you see, Archie did not want, when the people started to riot in the prison, the people who were locked up and so on, I was prosecuting Abu Bakr, and the lady before Cesar airs, and she didn't complete the matter, and she left, and so on, and all these matters. He would have been blamed for appointing her, so he either foolishly thought or trick her, if you resign and go and complete your matters, then I'll put you back as a judge. After she resigned, she realized that she's not going back to complete her matters, and that is the end of her. So she went to one of the best lawyers in the country, who is Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, and he fought it all the way to the Privy Council. And the Privy Council decided that the Chief Justice acted illegally.
Yes.
That he forced her, he coerced her, he pressured her, he tricked her. And then he went and lied to the President and said that is the difference to be drawn, that she resigned voluntarily. This is a very, very serious judgment.
Yes.
The man's integrity and character has been exposed.
Yes.
So how could you keep him as Chief Justice? So he's supposed to have the decency and resign, take a pension and go. He's a reprobate, he's a disgrace. But he bold-faced. He's not going anywhere.
Are there any laws that protect him in this position as Chief Justice?
If what, pardon?
Are there any laws that protect him in this position as Chief Justice?
Well, the whole thing will crumble. It will crumble. You know, and the sad thing is, you know, Justice Archie, Chief Justice, is a very brilliant judge. Brilliant.
Yes.
But he allowed his private life to mix up with his public life. I am not concerned with his private life. But whatever you're doing privately behind doors, it must not affect your performance as Chief Justice. What the hell he mean by getting houses for people who he have a relationship with? And they collecting money from people. All that came out. They were not plead guilty.
So this is not the first time that you've called for the resignation of someone in public office due to what you believe was unconstitutional behavior. I'm just referring back to the when you called for former Attorney General Reginald Armour to resign after the Piaco Airport corruption case. Do you see it as your duty, not just...
No. What happened with Armour?
Go ahead.
And so what happened here? This is a judge of the High Court.
Yes.
Who you kicked out illegally, forced her to resign. And you know something people does not know. Archie and Caesar were very good friends. Extremely good friends. They travel abroad, they represent the country abroad, they know one another very well. But he is concerned with his own self. He kicked her under the bus when this thing happened.
But do you think that it is your, I mean, why are you calling for it? Do you think that it is your responsibility to hold public officials accountable in this way? Why do you think that's important?
Well, you're asking an obvious question.
Well, I would like your answer for comment.
I don't want to sidetrack with other people. I am a lawyer and he's head of the judiciary. Let us remain with him, but everybody accountable. Everybody. But what he has done is unprecedented and has never been done in any of the Commonwealth countries in the entire world. Never. He must go. He will go. He will have to go.
He would have to go. So,
he would.
Go ahead.
Because what will happen is some lawyer will file for judicial review. But he will have to go. I think the political directorate will quietly ask him to leave. Because the people are not stupid. The people who are concerned with the crime and the safety, and crime is getting out of control, and the judiciary is in a disarray, and they're not handling this, and people lock up for so many years, they're presumed to be innocent, until proven guilty, etc., etc. It will affect anybody who is vying for political control of the country. So they'll ask him quietly to go.
Well, when is his term in office coming to an end?
He has about 5 or 6 more years. He was appointed as a judge, the youngest judge ever appointed in the country. A brilliant lawyer, a brilliant judge. But nobody knew about his personal life. And if they knew, they didn't believe that he would have been acting the way he's acted. Nobody knew.
So this early resignation, if he leaves office 5 or 6 years, or is forced to leave office 5 or 6 years before his term actually ends, what does it say about his reputation?
Well, all he will get is full pension and go about your business. And then what happens, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission will appoint another judge from the Court of Appeal, and so on. It won't come to an end, and so on. You know, Chief Justice Bernard said, when they asked for a comment at the time all this permit, he said it's a national scandal. Nothing has ever happened. He is ashamed. He said so personally. If you go back on the records, you hear what a former Chief Justice said, Quinton Bernard, who came from behind the bridge and became a judge. He said it stinks to high heaven what this man is doing. That's the Chief Justice said that. Another Chief Justice said he must give an explanation, and he given no explanation. And the only reason for that, there's 3 reasons for that. But I do not believe this is the reason. It's either on the ground of race. If Archie, let me say openly, if Archie was an East Indian, you think he would have get the protection he got only give him? If he was not from Tobago, you think he would have get the protection he get? If he was a supporter of the PNM party and come from Tobago, you think he would have get the support? But those are not the reasons. The reason is that Rowley wanted to control him. So once he didn't trigger it off, Archie was always indebted to Rowley.
Yes.
He wanted to control him, but once under the doctrine of separation of powers, you can't control the Chief Justice.
Right. So you called out the office of the president as well in the article by the Newsday. So the office of the...
not clearly.
Sure. So you would have called out the Office of the President as well to look into this matter and to call for the resignation of C.J. Archie. Why do you think Her Excellency's involvement is needed in this case?
Why I think what?
Her Excellency's involvement is needed in this case.
Involvement in? You're speaking a little too quickly for me.
Okay. Why do you think Her Excellency's or the Office of the President their involvement is needed in this case?
I really understand the question.
Sure. In the article that I believe it was by the Newsday that we would have pulled this from, you would have you would have called out the Office of the President as well to call for his resignation, the resignation of C.J. Archie. I was just wondering, what was the thinking behind that?
The reason behind I calling for Archie resignation?
Why the President has to be involved?
The President can't do anything.
That's why I'm asking.
No, the President can't do anything. What has had to happen is the Prime Minister of the country who has to recommend to the President to set up a judicial inquiry. You can't just arrive at the position that Archie wrong, because the Privy Council says so. You have to have an independent investigation. All we are asking for is either you resign or set up this committee for jurists to investigate whether you're unfit to be Chief Justice. That is all we're asking for. But in order for that to happen, is the Prime Minister who ought to trigger it. And that power should not be in the hands of the Prime Minister, it should be in the hands of the President. Because the President is the one who appoints the Chief Justice of the country after consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. So if the Chief Justice is doing something wrong, the President is the one who should have the power to set up this committee, not the Prime Minister.
So at one point, and I just, in closing, because we do have to wrap, we're coming up on the hour here. At one point in time, you were the UNC's top pick to assume the office of the President. Is this still something that piques your interest?
At one point I was doing what?
You were the UNC's top pick to assume the office of the President before Christine Kangaloo. Her Excellency Christine Kangaloo. Is this something that piques you?
All right. Okay. I might be prejudiced. If the people want to say that, I might be prejudiced. And since I'm nominated by UNC, UNC is political. All right. But what about the other people who call in for it? What about that? What you must recall whether I was nominated for president or not, and was not selected. What you have to bear in mind is 8 judges said that this man acted unlawfully and he removed a judge. I didn't say that. And all I am saying is investigate what he did, investigate how he coerced, how he pressure, and all these things. And if he really did that, besides what the Privy Council said, is that what they have to do now is recommend that the same Privy Council remove him. This thing is a complex matter. No, you can't interfere with the tenure of a Chief Justice, so
exactly.
Unless it's literally wrong. But so forget the personality involved. Me, okay, I prejudiced. I want him out. I racist. I everything. Forget me.
Why do you think you are one of the...
What I'm saying is all kind of nonsense we hear online and all this sort of a thing, right? I don't bother with people. I don't bother with people who are saying these things. Because you get a country you deserve. Are you yourself, you speak it to me, are you satisfied that you are safe in this country? Are you satisfied, you yourself, with the crimes out of control and all that? Are you satisfied that people lock up for 10 and 15 years? Unless it's your brother or sister or somebody and they can't get a date of trial in court. Are you satisfied that police kill over 500 and something people and you're not investigating whether the police executed them or really acted in self-defense? This country is a lost country.
Why do you think you are one of the main voices speaking up on this? Why isn't this anything coming from the executive, the Prime Minister, Office of the Prime Minister? Why are you the only one, not the only one, but why are you one of the main voices on this?
I am not the only one. I represent the Criminal Bar Association.
Yes.
I'm a senior practitioner. The law school recognized recently, I don't want to sound ostentatious, they chose 7 graduates from the law school over the last 50 years, and I recognized myself and the judge of the CCJ and a couple other high-ranking people as the lawyers who contributed the most to the jurisprudence and the development, because I am outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
I speak my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to depend on UNC or PNM to give me a brief so I could buy food, to pay my expenses. I don't depend on political handouts. I was trained differently by my mother and father, my grandmother, and my village.
Yes.
To speak out and stand up for your right. I was trained so, and ever since I came out, maybe you were a little girl, not even wrong. I'm the first one in the country when I couldn't get a case advertised. And say the French Creole people controlling the society. If you want to right sound like a politician, and you from slavery to indentured to now, you think this is society change? Watch it happen until and Mova and Caroni and all that. See all the people suffering. Who can't get water? Who can the children? Who's suffering? And who making the $100 million every year? $100 million. Who? You think the society change? Every government in the past ruled in the interest of the parasitic oligarchy and not the downtrodden people. But I am not going to allow the politics to get in the way. I am dealing with one narrow thing. Our Chief Justice betrayed his oath and he's supposed to go.
All right. So, Chief Justice...
You know, let me end up with something.
Go ahead.
You know, the Commissioner of Police came to me when they accused Chief Justice Sharma for interfering with a case to protect Pandey, and he was telling the Chief Magistrate how to dismiss the case and so on. And I, Israel B. Raja Khan, is the lawyer who recommended to the Commissioner of Police to lock up and charge the Chief Justice, and he did that. People want to forget that? I am the lawyer. And the more flack I get, oh, he's an Indian like yourself. He's not an Indian like me. He did something wrong. And they lock him up and they charge him. You remember that?
No. Not as much, no.
That happened some years.
Yeah.
But they lock him up and they charge him. And not only that, Manin, the DPP dropped the charge and they trigger 137. And he underwent the same thing we asked Archie to go. He underwent that. So it's one law for somebody if you come south of the Caroni Bridge, and another if you live in the east-west corridor, metaphorically speaking.
Mr. Khan,
what else do you want to know?
I'm just getting a question here. What actions can we expect from you or the CBA if there's no resignation or inquiry?
I don't know, but what I do know after this conversation and this interview you have, all this not coming live. You go to editor, they're going to take out most of the things.
This is live. It's going live right now.
No. While we're talking, they're not coming live.
Yeah.
They coming live?
Yes.
Well, good. Let the country hear what I said.
Yes, I would agree. So I want to just end with something you said. You said stand up for your rights. I'm encouraging the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to stand up for what is right. So
yes. So maybe I look at the news tonight because outside in the gallery, I'm not looking at the TV.
That's no problem at all. I hope that you do enjoy the rest of your day. We do have to wrap now. Thank you so much for joining me and for having this conversation and for sharing your knowledge.
Okay, but you're the devil advocate. You're proving me.
That's my job.
Okay. Yeah, that is your job anyway. I think you will make a good lawyer. Study law part-time.
Thank you so much.
Study law part-time and come out and speak out. We are the old ones. We in the department lunch. We're going out. The young one must stand up.
The young ones must stand up. I agree.
Take care.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. To our viewers, we're just going to take a short commercial break and we'll be right back with you with more. Stay with us.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Hello and good morning again. Welcome back to AM Prime. So again, we're just going to jump straight into it. So TNT, Trinidad and Tobago, reinstates the buggery law. What does this mean for human rights? The ruling to uphold the buggery law in Trinidad and Tobago has sparked a deep and emotional reaction within the LGBTQ community and across the broader human rights landscape in the country. Many are grappling with the implications of a law that, purposefully or not, criminalizes consensual relationships between adults, despite the growing global consensus around LGBTQ+ rights and equality. Pride TT and other activists and activist groups have been at the forefront of challenging this law, highlighting not only the direct harm it causes to individuals, but also the wider message it sends about human dignity, equality, and more. Just one moment. Today we're speaking with Kennedy Everett Mirage, the co-founder of Pride TT, an LGBTQ activist group. Good morning, how are you doing?
Hi Jada, good morning, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all of your viewers for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important topic this morning.
I would agree it is very important, so I do hope that we have a great conversation. So in your view, what does this ruling say about Trinidad and Tobago's commitment to progress?
Well, I guess that's a very important term, right? Progress. What exactly does it mean? Because clearly you have laws on the book that undermines the human rights of a certain class of people, citizens in our country. You can't call it progress, plain and simple. I mean, so I think from our standpoint, we see this as a significant setback for human rights, both within our country as well as on the global stage. The reinstatement of this buggery law it definitely undermines so much of the progress that many advocates would have been making on the as it relates to advancing issues of equality and recognizing the dignity for all LGBTQ people in our country. But more than that, it also raises serious concerns about the protection of the basic and essential fundamental freedoms that we all enjoy as citizens of our country in what is supposed to be what we would like to call a progressive democratic society that protects citizens from all forms of discriminations and gives us citizens protections and privileges because we are citizens of this country.
All right. Did you ever think that we'd be in a place where the 2018 original ruling that we all celebrated in 2018 could be overturned?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you ever think we'd be in this position where the 2018 ruling would be overturned?
Listen, so again, we all knew going into this. This was something that Jason Jones would have done on his own. He didn't really consult the support or approval of any LGBT organizations, but he did inform us that this was something that he was doing as a private citizen of this country. And one of the things that he prepared us for is that this was going to be a long, tough, and drawn-out battle. As you said, 2018, he would have filed this motion in 2017, and the judgment came down in 2018, and now here we are in 2025 with the Court of Appeal ruling, and knowing fully well that regardless whatever the outcome was here in 2025 with this Court of Appeal ruling, it would have gone to the Privy Council, and again, so it's going to be a long, drawn-out battle. I don't know when the end date for that is going to be, but it also means it gives us enough time, to prepare ourselves to move our country in the right direction, and that can come in many different ways. It comes on advocates working on the ground to transform people's minds and opinions when it comes to this particular so-called controversial issue, and it also gives us the opportunity to continue lobbying with our parliamentarians and elected officials to champion the notions of equality for all citizens in this country.
All right. Why did you put controversial issue in air quotes?
Because I don't see it as a controversial issue. Obviously, as a fully gay man, this is my reality, it's my existence. It's what it is. I have to walk around with every single day. And I often tell people, me being gay is probably the least interesting thing about me. I'm just like everyone else. I have a job that's 9 to 5. It's a full. I have friends, I have family, I have interests, that goes outside of, my sexual orientation. I enjoy sports, I enjoy seeing TV shows, I like to lime and party and go to the beach on weekends. It's like, I am no different when you really get to know me. So I don't understand why there's, so many people in this country seems to be so preoccupied with who it is I sleep with and what I am doing in the privacy of my bedroom. Like, it's none of your business. I don't really spend any time trying to figure out what you are doing in your bedroom. So why are you so bothered about what I am doing in my bedroom? And that is what this law essentially is really all about when it comes down to, right? A lot of people tend to think of it, because we're talking about the act of buggery and, if I can say anal sex on TV right now. A lot of people tend to think that, it's an LGBT issue. And the ironic twist about this is that this law, before it was repealed in 2018, it was written in our books to criminalize consensual adult activity between adults who are both heterosexuals as well as homosexuals. So it's everybody that is impacted because of this law. So it's not to say that this is the gay law, this is the LGBT law that's going to imprison all of the gay people in this country. No, you as a straight person in a relationship, you can be impacted by this. They say it's not enforced, but again, that's another thing that I want to bring up here. People often use that as the scapegoat excuse. Well, it's not enforced. Well, if it's not enforced, why do we have it as a law in our country? Why is it restricting freedoms and privileges and protections, if it's not enforced? And then, we look at other countries and we see how leaders who are now taking the thrones of power are utilizing laws that are in existence from 100, 200 years ago to dismantle human rights and protections for their own citizens. Do we not recognize that this could also happen to us in our country, even though this is not enforced? We are in an election season. We don't know what the politicians have in mind when they get into that seat of power. It could very well be somebody might come there and say, what, I'm homophobic, I am anti-LGBT.
Yes.
Law is already legal, and this gives me the legal grounds to go after every person who I suspect maybe is LGBT and lock them up. Again, this is the reality of LGBT people in this country. And it's also your reality, given that the law criminalizes, as I said, consensual activities between consenting adults in the privacy of their bedrooms.
So, in a Parliament address many years ago, former Prime Minister Keith Rowley would have indicated that LGBTQ citizens are safe, they should feel safe, and that they are entitled to the rights of any other citizen. This now is sort of being challenged. Do you have any comment when it comes to that? Can we trust our politicians to uphold what they say?
I also remember when he became Prime Minister in 2015, parliamentarian colleague would have brought up an LGBT issue, and he very triumphantly got up and he asked the question, well, who are the LGBT people in this country? Almost as if he was unaware that there were gay people existing and who are citizens of his own country. But it was a curious curious response that he gave there, because the reason why he would have done it is because he knows that we live in a very homophobic society. He also knows there are no legal protections for persons who are homosexuals, and therefore, if that is the reality of our situation, there is no sensible gay person who's going to triumphantly and openly say, I am gay and I am the LGBT person that you don't seem to be aware of. So when he has said that, and he's not the only Prime Minister who has said that, nearly every single one of them in the past have said the same exact thing. Now, here's what it is I want Trinidad and Tobago to understand and recognize about this buggery law. The reason why Jason Jones went after this, and the reason why the LGBT community, is so hyper-vigilant in advocating for this law to be repealed, is because every time the LGBT issue came up in this country from a government or state perspective, and especially when they go to international organizations such as the United Nations, and they are being held accountable for their anti-LGBT and homophobic laws that in our books, the first thing they always point to is the buggery law. And the reason why they say that is because they know the buggery law is attached to the Savings Clause law in our country. What is the Savings Clause law? The Savings Clause law is a law that simply states every single law that was put in the books that governed our country before we became an independent nation is now saved, meaning that those laws, regardless of the fact of whether it applies to our modern day progressive society today, it doesn't matter. It is now safe, and therefore our legislatures and our judiciary has to abide by those laws, which is why this verdict came out. It did. The judges had no choice, because it was a law that was put in our books before we became independent. It didn't matter whether it was justified in today's progressive society or whether it was, illegal or moral or immoral. The fact that it was there before independence, it is considered a safe law. So the judges who enforce laws, so to speak, or make laws, they have to, go by what is written in our law books. So therein lies the predicament that we find ourselves in today.
Do you think that, because you kind of jumped ahead of me there when I was going to bring up the SAFE law, do you think that it can perpetuate legal discrimination? For example, in the last case, in 2018 case with Jason Jones, he brought up a lot of incidents where he was personally harassed or personally attacked, and when he went to the people in our country, organizations in our country that's supposed to protect us, the PTSD, etc., he was discriminated against. He wasn't protected, he was discriminated against. So do you think that this can bring about any sort of legal discrimination, and what type of legal discrimination can LGBTQ citizens face with this law now being overturned?
Well, that's the sad thing, right? So now that this law is reinstated in our law books, and now it's back to being the law of the land, essentially, in a nutshell, what it does, it's legalized discrimination. That's what this law is, by upholding a colonial era law that now criminalizes consensual same-sex relations. This court has effectively reinforced systemic discriminations against LGBTQ people. So, and again, that contradicts the principles of equality and non-discrimination that are supposedly enshrined in our Constitution, which is supposed to protect all citizens, regardless of all their backgrounds, right? So again, and in doing that, what it does is that it increases the stigma and the vulnerability of this marginalized group. Right? So this ruling now has now given the opportunity to embolden many of the hostilities against LGBTQ people face. So now you're talking about legitimizing societal discrimination and increasing the risk of violence, the harassment, the exclusion, lack of opportunities, bullying that we are subjected to from both a societal and economic perspective. So again, this is when people say that LGBT people have so much rights and privileges, and I don't understand what they mean by when it is we're talking about discrimination. I mean, as an openly gay man, I have to laugh at this. Yes, I am able to get a job. But if my employer was the one, maybe he's watching this program right now. I mean, I don't have to worry about it because he already knows. But if didn't know and he's watching this program right now, and I'm crazy enough to come out to national television and speak on this issue openly, he can probably call me up right after this interview airs and says, you know what, I don't think you are the perfect representation for my company. And he doesn't have to even let me know that it's because I'm gay, but it's probably that's probably his reason why. And what is my legal recourse? Which course of law am I going to go to and say my employer just told me he's fired me because I am gay, because I'm LGBT? Are my human rights going to be protected? I don't have the human rights when it comes to those levels of protection. So when we talk about it from a simple perspective like that, this is what we are referring to.
What does this say about the mental health of LGBTQ citizens? Have you spoken to anybody that may have taken this especially hard?
Well, yes. I mean, listen, I have been feeling calls, and I've got some messages from so many people in the past couple of days. I've also gotten calls from, friends and colleagues who are living abroad and questioning how could this possibly have happened. And, they were like, WTF, I thought this was a done deal. And, Trinidad was leading the way and showing the other Caribbean countries as well as the Commonwealth, divided Commonwealth, where we stand when it comes to issues relating to non-discrimination and equality. A lot of people are genuinely scared, but I think that's the message that I want to send to LGBT people across Trinidad and Tobago right now, is that, even though this law is a setback for us, the road to progress and to change is always going to be a long road. No one ever said it was going to be easy. No one said that that there won't be a lot of bumps along the routes and a lot of obstacles, and that's all that this is. It's an obstacle. Jason Jones would have said that to us, when he filed this motion. It's not going to be overnight. Things are not. And even if it is the judgment was to come down from the Privy Council tomorrow and repeal what the Court of Appeal just reinstated, that doesn't necessarily mean that homophobia is going to immediately be dismissed. Now, it may embolden us and empower us because now we have the law on our side and we feel protected, and that's a great. But changing the minds and hearts of people on an issue that, as we just talked about, some people see it as very controversial and very taboo. It's going to take a long time. But again, I always tell people our existence is our resilience, and continue to be who you are. Don't run back into that closet. Don't feel ashamed. And final thing I would say, this is an opportunity where allies get to step up. There are so many people, and I can tell you as a gay man, in my own country, I had the opportunity, like many of my colleagues and friends who are now living abroad and left this country because of their sexual orientation and the lack of opportunities that they thought would not have been afforded to them. I am still here mainly because I have so much support. Now, I'm one of the privileged few. There are many others who don't have that support, and some of this I have received has been primarily from straight allies. And I always tell my straight allies, I appreciate your support. I welcome it. I need it, but I need you to take it further. In this moment where we have a law that's literally saying that's how I don't want you to exist. I mean, I don't want to be too dramatic, but that's essentially what this law is trying to say to us. This is where you as an ally need to get up and step up a little bit more, instead of just sitting in front of your laptops and your computer screens and liking a comment or posting a message or just sending a WhatsApp message to someone that walk with us when we are protesting on the streets. Speak to your parliamentarians when they're coming to you door to door now because it's election season. Let them know this may not affect me because I'm a straight person, but it affects so many of my friends and colleagues and family members, and I will not stand for it. This is the next step that we need.
So we would be closing a little bit, but I wanted to speak to the issue of morality. So it can be argued that individuals in places of power are attempting to dictate public social norms through law. But would you agree that it's that cut or dry, or do you think that there's more nuance to that, and bringing into question religious groups?
Well, I love the fact that, in both the High Court judgments as well as the Court of Appeal, the issues of morality and religion were not the arguments that both judges in those courts, legislate on, or should I say ruled on. It was simply a legal matter. But to answer your question about morality and religion, I laugh because I have to ask people, is it that your religion is sanctioning discrimination and treating people unfairly? I mean, we talk so much about, how religion is supposed to be inclusive, it's supposed to unite, it's supposed to be about forgiveness, it's supposed to be about being non-judgmental. If you truly are a religious person, regardless of what your faith is, and again, there's no LGBT person, certainly not myself, who's telling you how to worship and what your religion should be. I'm not trying to take away your rights and privileges based on your religion. You can practice your religion whenever you want to, but who are you to judge me the same way? Who am I to judge you? It's not an issue about morality. Again, people talk about, about this being an immoral thing. Again, going back to what it is I said at the top of our conversation, me being gay is the least interesting thing about me. I can tell you that. I can put my head on a block and say that. There is so much about me as a human being, and that's where you should see me as a human being. I have dreams, I have goals, I have ambitions, I have fears, I have doubts, I have problems and issues just like everybody else. Who I sleep with and how I choose to love and who I choose to love should not be of your concern. It's not impacting you. It's not affecting you in any way, which way, shape, or form. And you don't get to judge me. The same way I don't get to judge you. This is not a moral issue. You have to look deep within yourself and ask yourself, if it is, I'm seeing LGBT people in a negative light because of whatever belief or morals or religious beliefs that you have, and these people are your family members, these people are your neighbors, these people are the persons who sit next to you in the maxi and taxis, these people are who you're working with and you get along with, and these are people who do so much for you, then why are you hating on them? And and where's your sense of morality if where you are coming is always going to be from a place of hate and judgment?
So it kind of sort of brings us to the end of the conversation. I wanted to ask if you had anything else you wanted to leave with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, anything else you wanted to say on behalf of anyone?
Well, I think, again, to reinforce that to all LGBT people who are watching here, I know sometimes it feels like, your rights and your voices are not being heard whatsoever, but, be resilient. If it's one thing I always like to say about LGBT people is that we are a very resilient bunch. I mean, we put up with a lot every single day, having to sometimes, live in the closets and hide a major part of our identity just to survive. But, we will get through this. It's going to take some time, but it will. I do strongly believe, I'm very much optimistic and hopeful that in the end everything is going to fall into place, and one day in our country will recognize us and see us as lawful, legally law-abiding citizens. And if I would say, the interesting thing about this judgment is that based on what the judges and the majority ruling by the judges is that they sort of put the onus back on Parliament. And they're basically saying Parliament has to create laws. It's not us to create a law. We can just enforce the law based on the existing law. Again, so we are in election season. We are about to make another very important decision about the future of our country with regards to who is going to lead it for the next 5 years. This may not be your issue per se because you may not be LGBT, but you have friends and family. And again, a law such as this clearly impacts you. It's written for it's going to impact heterosexuals. They are literally policing, and I don't know how they plan to do it, but they are literally policing what you do in the privacy of your bedrooms. You know, again, you know, they say it's not enforceable, but this is where it is you get to hold your parliamentarians accountable. So when they meet you at your doorsteps, you have a right and an obligation to speak to them on these issues and tell them, listen, I may not agree with the LGBT agenda. If I think they have an agenda, I don't really like them. That's not for me. But at the end of the day, I live in a country where we have a lot of different races and people from many different backgrounds. This is what made us the proud, triumphant, you know, amazing country that we are. This is why I'm Trinity the Born. Am I really going to be all of that and say, you know what, you see all of them gay people who sit on the marginalized lane? Leave them. No, I don't really care about them. You are not being a religious person. You're not being a patriotic citizen if that is your fundamental beliefs are. And so I plead to our allies, you know, really re-educate yourself on these issues. If it is your whole hardcore judgmental beliefs, ask yourself why that is. And then our parliamentarians, you have a job to do. We can sit here and wait for the next 100 years for the Privy Council to deliver a judgment on this. But in that time, you have an opportunity to correct an obvious wrong. You know, stop hiding behind the savings clause law and saying that you can't touch it. When the whole fact of the matter, the reason why Jason Jones won this case is because they amended the law in the 80s, a law that was supposed to be safe and protected. The Parliament amended it, and that was the loophole that the High Court Judge, Justice Vinja Ramprasad, you know, that was his rationale. It's like you amended it once, even though it was safe. So then that gives the courts the opportunity to be
here. It sets a legal precedent, yeah.
Sets a precedent. So again, these are the things that I would want to say both to our parliamentarians, our allies, as well as to the LGBT community. Stay strong, stay resilient. Don't let this set you back. It's just a minor obstacle. We will win this battle in the end. And Pride is coming up. Come out there, represent your interests, and let your country know that you exist and you're not going anywhere.
All right, and I do hope that what I'm about to say next can bring some hope to even you and other activist groups. I spoke with Jason Jones in an Instagram exchange yesterday, and he had this to say on the support that he's been receiving. He says, "I wish to thank local Trinbago advocacy groups for their hard work and commitment to the queer liberation struggle. We all want the same thing, full equality and freedom for every Trinbagonian citizen. I'm pursuing this path through the courts on my own without any assistance or support. I am a proudly queer Trinbagonian citizen fighting for my rights, and I am privileged to have access to the resources and legal counsel to support my legal challenge. To be clear, my challenge of our Constitution is just one arm of the arsenal required to break down colonialism, patriarchy, misogyny, and multiple phobias against differently lived experiences of our people. I may remind our citizens of our watchword of tolerance, and that here we must find an equal place. Trinidad and Tobago is for all of we. No one should be excluded." So I do hope that would have brought some hope to the issue.
Yeah, so that, and finally, if I can just say, I just want to say thanks to you guys in the media. You all have been, true allies to us in some ways. And also, we also have to fight with you guys a little bit because there's always, greater education to be had. And sometimes, we hold you guys accountable with respect to the way how it is some media partners and some media houses report on the LGBT issue. Again, we are not a salacious headline. We are actual people with real issues that is impacting the quality of life that we lead as law-abiding, tax-paying citizens in this country. So we don't, I caution the media sometimes. When you're reporting the LGBT issue, never forget that there's a human behind that headline. Please, there's always an opportunity for all of us to do better. So Jada, thank you so much for the opportunity. I know you had to really push me to come on TV this morning and do it, but it was a pleasure, and I encourage the little push that you give me to do it. So I do appreciate that, and thanks for all of your support and all of your colleagues here at WESN.
All right, I appreciate the comments. Thanks so much. And yes, accountability across the board for the media is important, and I do like that you would have pointed that out. So thanks again. Thanks for joining us, and I do hope that you have a beautiful day.
You too. It's a long weekend. Enjoy it.
I will. You too. Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our scheduled program here, AM Prime. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. So I wanted to, of course, leave you guys on a quote. It says, "Winners never quit and quitters never win." You know, throughout all of the times we've been doing these quotes, we want to just push the narrative of resilience. We want to push the narrative of pushing through and being diligent and getting to your goal no matter what. So I do hope that brings some sort of encouragement to you guys. And I just wanted to put, the quote was by Vince Lombardi. All right. So just a little quick reminder that you can find us on our YouTube or Facebook, where you can leave your comments and suggestions for us to engage with you. Head to WESNCC, again WESNCC, to engage with us now, and your comments can be featured on AM Prime. I do hope that you have a beautiful day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Fanzone.